Welcome back to Phae's Place, a podcast where dreamers have the liberty to dream. I'm your host, Phaedra, and I am so excited that we have this time to dream together. When people think of art forms, they usually picture dancers or actors or artists, but there's no doubt that there's an art form to the work trial lawyers cultivate. Today, our guest is one of the best attorneys around. Attorney Powell, thank you so much for stopping by Faith's Place. How are you doing today?
Good. Thank you for having me. I'm doing great.
Awesome. I must admit, before we continue on, I'm a huge fan of your name. I think it's the coolest name besides mine, but I think it's the coolest name. Is
Thank
there
you.
a story? What's the story behind your name?
Well, I asked my mother, how she said she learned it in school when she was in school, and then she forgot the meaning. So I started searching for the meaning. They say it's a derivative of Yakub, from the Bible, and Cobia, and then I googled it, and it's one of the definitions is king blackfish. I like the king black part, but it's
Agreed.
but that's one of the other definitions. So I just been on a search for it. So
I love it. His name is Cobia. It just rolls off the tip of your tongue.
sure, yes.
Awesome. So take us back to young Cobia growing up in Brownsville, Brooklyn.
hmm
If someone was to ask you at that time, what did you want to be when you grew up? What was your answer?
Well, from what I hear from my parents and my sisters, my older sisters, they always said I wanted to be a lawyer. Honestly, I don't know why I wanted to be a lawyer back then. I can't remember why, but it's something that I said since I was young, that I wanted to be a lawyer. I don't know if it was from watching on TV or anything like that, but it's just something that I always wanted to be. I wanted to be other things too. I wanted to be an NFL quarterback. I wanted to.
Okay.
I wanted to play baseball at one point. I wanted to be a WWE wrestler. a lot, a lot of things young Kobe wanted to be, but the lawyer stuck his way through. It's something that I continue to go after. After high school, I went to the Urban Assembly for Law and Justice downtown Brooklyn, and then at Syracuse when the football team didn't want me to walk on because they said send an email. I was like, the Lord is. That's the only thing that stood strong. And then also in college, I didn't want to be a criminal defense attorney. After reading the new Jim Crow, when I realized that the system is on plea bargaining and people going to prison and jail. I was like, I want to do something different than that. I know a lot of people are criminal defense attorneys and a lot of great defenders, and private attorneys. But I was like, what could I do like to change the law? So one of the things that I found was Section 1983, which is a part of the law that you can use to sue municipalities, sue police, sue correction officers, sue the government when they do things wrong to citizens and non-citizens as well. So I was like, that's it, and that's how I ended up where I'm at today.
And you talked a little bit about that, but can you go more in depth about what inspired this path of becoming an attorney for you?
hmm So I just saw attorney as a way to make change. You know, like when I started learning about more attorneys, Thurgood Marshall, the Johnny Cochrans, it was a way to change the law or help change someone's life. And once I knew that and I put more building blocks on what made me want to become an attorney, what type of attorney I wanted to be, I just kept building from there.
Now, besides our passion and love for justice, we have something else in common:
Absolutely.
music.
Yes.
What is your go to song before you go on a big trial?
Mm, before I go on a big trial.
Or does it change?
It does. It
Okay.
does. I listen to a lot of music. Not necessarily trial, but I do have a song for you.
Yes.
Before when I first started doing depositions, I was a little antsy.
Now,
Um,
explain to the listening audience what a deposition is.
got you. So deposition is when, an attorney asks a person questions and it's under oath. and they have to answer your questions, and it's very great when you're deposing police officers because they're not used to answering questions. They could just not say anything, but basically they have to answer your question unless it's privileged or there's another thing where they can't answer it, and then a transcript is created so you can use that testimony at trial or in other places to say this is what they said under oath and basically lock them into that testimony at a later time. God forbid anyone passes away, you have that transcript from that time to say this is what they said under oath. So you always have that for the case. So
Very good.
that's a deposition. So when I first started, and I get a little nervous before I would do every one of my depositions. I don't do it as much anymore, but I always think about how fast time goes. So when I first started, I would listen to Zoom by the Commodores, and it will always put me at ease before basically it's like going to war in a deposition because you don't know the person, you don't know how they're gonna answer your questions, you don't know if they're gonna be difficult, but it just put me at ease before I started the deposition.
I love that. And music is so powerful. Like you said, it has the power to transform your mood. You could it gets you really excited or it could calm you down. And anytime you go way back, I think that's a good sign.
What's one of your favorite songs?
Well, I would put on anything Anita Baker
Mm,
or Luther Vandross. And my
yes,
favorite of all time is Whitney Houston.
absolutely. Okay.
Yeah. Yes, 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 yes. Oh, but okay, well, now that you asked me that question,
Mm,
I do love, I think it's the Emotions, The Best of My Love.
mm-hmm.
So, do you find that it's hard maintaining a work-life balance in your career?
It could be. It could be. I find that that's a great question. A lot of people do get burnt out from, being an attorney. A lot of people use a lot of vices, when they're attorney, whether, there's a plethora of those, to get them through. So what I found out about, I'm gonna take you back.
Take me
I'm
back.
gonna take you back to law school. Law school. So we're in orientation. I went to CUNY Law. We are orientation, and I'm a new student. They're telling us how difficult, you know, law school is, and difficult. They said it like 50 times during the orientation, and it's a lot to hear. You're going on this new journey, you're going on this new experience, and something happened to me that never happened before. So I was in the auditorium, and they kept saying, it was the 51st time they said law school is going to be difficult, and then I had like a bodily reaction. So I was like, oh man, my heart started beating. So I was like, let me go to the bathroom to calm myself down. I didn't know what it was at that time, but I realized, after that it was like a panic attack type of thing. So I was like, oh man, this can't happen. So what I learned from that moment is that to keep my stress level low, through law school, and I took that from law school within the job. So as far as the work-life balance, I think that people, to not burn themselves out, they got to give themselves time to, when they're at work, and then go home and then do what they like to do. Kind of relax. When you're on trial, it's kind of like one day is every day, but you're not on trial all the time. So you got to learn what you need to do to keep yourself, healthy. Because it can really take a lot if you're just work, 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 and then you burn yourself out, and then you start to use vices to kind of get yourself through, which is not healthy as well.
Now, do you think it's because of our generation that we are better with this idea of work-life balance, or do you think that even other generations had that idea? Or
I think we're better with it, our generation. I think the older generation are starting to understand it because they didn't go through that. They was just work, 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 pound the pavement, pound the pavement, pound the pavement. Whereas now you have us saying that there has to be more of a balance. It's not just work, 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 work. So I see that we definitely brought that in, and I see over time the older generation gradually starting to understand, how important that is. And some that were being more stubborn to say, oh, work-life balance, you just work 35 hours a day and till the job gets done and do whatever you have to do. Now they're realizing that that's really not the best method.
I love it when they listen to us, right?
Absolutely.
We are so wise. So you talk about learning how to not be so stressful. What are some things that you do that's mandatory so you won't be so stressed?
I still like to watch sports. I think that's one thing that that there's some things that I did in high school that I didn't do in college. Like, I used to play PlayStation a lot in high school. I didn't really take that over into college, but watching sports was something that remained, throughout college, throughout law school. And it just helps, even for a little bit of time, just ease your mind when you get to watch your favorite team, even if they haven't been winning so much, New York Jets, but it still gives me an ease of mind to watch sports and talk to my friends, things about what they go through in some of their fields, and kind of comparing and contrasting how to get through certain things. So that having that cohort and watching sports is definitely something that helps me get through.
I'm glad you brought that up. On social media, they always say that guys don't always have good relationships as, with friends. But I think that you might beg to differ. So let's talk about male friendships and the importance of male friendships and healthy male friendships.
Absolutely. I always see the reverse
Okay.
in my opinion. Like, I see a lot of women sometimes, have relationships, and then, like, with their friends, like their other women friends, and then they're not friends anymore, and then they have another friend, and then they're not friends anymore. But to get back to your question, I think, male relationships, friendships are definitely important. I've been, blessed to have a lot of good ones. I know people that don't have a lot of friendships that last. For myself, I have friends that I'm still cool with from high school. I have friends that I'm still cool with from college. So those relationships and friendships help me get through, because it's good when you can bond, with with your male friends, and talk with them and stuff. And the difference with us, I would say, is that we don't have to talk every day, but when we do get together or when we do talk, it's like we're right back where we first met. So that's something that is very important, because I think, especially as men, a lot of times we don't talk a lot about whether it's emotions or things that we're going through. And something that we learned from high school is that, if one person always hits their with end first, and then it's like, all right, then the blocks start falling out. Well, I went through this, and then I went through this, and that's how we usually build. But you have to have that space to be vulnerable in that way, because if you don't, then everybody just holds everything in. But it's always interesting to see, like, wow, you've been through that too. And because I do the same thing. Somebody say something, I'm like, wow, you've been through that too. And then I offer my story, and then somebody else offers their story. And that's how we usually, try to resolve things or get through it.
And in church, we call that testimony.
Absolutely.
And I think that has always been a focal point when the discussion comes with male friendships, that they're not vulnerable enough. But I'm
Hmm.
happy to see that your friend group is learning, or has that vulnerability that you guys can share with one another. What's another secret that you feel has kept your friendships together for so long?
Another secret.
Don't worry, I won't tell nobody. Not.
That's a good one. I don't know if it's necessarily a secret, but I think it's just, communication. I think one thing that helped us is that even back then, before mental health was really popular, we were talking about those things. We talking about like 2014, 2013, somewhere around that area, where it wasn't really as popularized, if that's a word. With with
It's a
with
word here at Faye's Place.
So it wasn't as popular to do it, but we were doing it back then. So then when the world started to seemingly accept it, then it was like, oh, we've been doing this, and it's just like, oh, I do have one secret specifically for one of my groups, BSB, particularly us, is that we allow people to, like, go out of the group and just live life and do what they had to do, go through anything they had to go through, and then when they come back, it's like they never left. I think with other groups, maybe like, I haven't talked to this person in such and such time, but you never know what somebody's going through. You have people, losing loved ones or going through tough times in school or at work, and you don't know. And then they come back, and then you learn all these things, and it's like, we got you. So I think that's one of the secrets. You got to let people live life. You never know what people are going through.
No judgment.
Absolutely.
You also talked about your love for sports, and I know that you were an athlete. How do
Hmm.
you think being an athlete in sports impact your career today?
Discipline. I think more than anything else, it's discipline. A little irrational confidence too, but above the irrational confidence is discipline. I mean, you know, my baseball coach back in high school had us come to games. The games would start at 1 o'clock. I'll meet up with my friend Kashik, and I said, well, we got to get there like at 11. So that means we got to leave the house at 9:30, and so you can prepare to play the game, so you can warm up and you're not getting to the game when the game starts. I think it's the same thing with the law. You want to prepare. If you have a motion due this date, like say you have a motion due in 3 weeks, 2 weeks from that time, you want to prepare who's going to do what, and then 1 week before the motions due, you want to have a certain amount of things done, so you're not just trying to do everything the last day. Honestly, in the legal field though, that's gonna happen based on the nature of the beast, because you're not only doing one motion, you're doing this complaint, you're writing something else, you got this appearance. But knowing when everything is due and making a plan for it, that's the one thing that sports, definitely got from sports. That discipline, what to eat the night before, all these different type of things to prepare you to try to be in your best form for the game. Definitely discipline more than anything.
I love that you brought up food. So tell me, what's the best thing to eat before trial day? Nothing? No.
Well,
We
before,
fast, Phaedra, we fast. No.
kind of though, kind of not before trial, but when I'm on trial, I usually don't eat breakfast, so I only eat lunch, which is usually like a sandwich. So it's kind of, you lose a lot of weight during trial, because you can't really eat hearty meals because you don't want to, fall asleep sometimes, and
Your Honor, this was boring. No.
yes, yes, and you don't want to be nodding off, and then the jury sees you, and then it's like, oh man, they're not taking this serious. So, I try to eat light. I eat a little heavy after the trial day is done. Get a little bit more food, but during trial, try to keep it limited. Even the water is really limited because you don't want to have a lot of restroom breaks. And the jury has to go out of the courtroom, then come back in. So you try to keep it flowing as much as you can. Just always worrying about the jury during trial.
Good tip. Good tip to know. Let's talk about dreams versus reality. What expectations did you have about your career, and how does it compare with reality?
I think I'm still learning it, and I didn't really come in with any expectations because I haven't really been around lawyers. A lot of people in my family or a lot of people I knew weren't attorneys. I learned about attorneys, and learning from attorneys through going through law school, having internships. So I didn't have too many expectations about what it would be. I would say the reality of it is that it's kind of like any other job field. It could be a lot of mean people for no reason that make the job harder. Mostly adversaries or sometimes judges make it more difficult than it needs to be. You learn there's some people who are not as disciplined, and just like any other job field, and don't do things at their best ability. So that's always interesting to find out about. But also there's rewarding things, as far as winning cases or trying to get the law changed. That's the one thing that's, especially in a time like this. You know, that's the one thing as a lawyer. That's what you can use that tool for, to try to change the law or try to prevent atrocities and horrible things from happening as an attorney. So that's one thing where you really get to learn the power of it. I didn't think, like I said, I didn't have too many expectations, but that power of the law you really learn by going through it and knowing what you can stop. Like you can stop something from happening if it's illegal, and you file this or you file this motion, this injunction, which stops things from occurring. Like it's a tool, and a lot of people look to you. That's the thing. As soon as you say you're an attorney, it doesn't matter what attorney you are. It's like you get questions about any legal topic ever, and people really look to you for answers. So that's the reality. And once you're an attorney, you're gonna get asked by everybody, family, friends. I have a legal question. I want to ask you this. I want to ask you that. And as lawyers, you always point people in the direction of the person that works in that field because everybody specializes. If you have a civil rights question, I'm your guy. But if you're looking for wills, trusts, and estates, I don't know too much about that. So I'm gonna point you to a direction, or point you to somebody who may know somebody who knows how to do that. So that's one of the things that's the reality. You always ask legal questions by everyone, and people are just gonna come to you with their problems. So you just try to help them as best as you can.
Pursuing your dream is hard enough. You might as well look good while you're doing it. Like I always say, when you look good, you feel good. And when you feel good, you do good. Embodied Apparel is all about doing good for the community. It provides quality statement apparel and opportunities for firsthand social and civic engagement. My favorite part is not only are the t-shirts soft and comfortable, but they are printed by Turn 90, which is a nonprofit that provides therapy and job placement to men creating a new direction after prison. Now that's a dream I can get behind. Shop now at embodiedapparel.com, and for a 10% discount on your purchase, please use the code Phae's. We always hear that representation is key. Did you find it difficult, maybe not growing up, but while you were pursuing your career being an attorney, to stay encouraged or think that this dream could become a reality because you did not see that and you were not around a lot of attorneys?
I would say this is where the irrational confidence. So like when you're an athlete, when you play sports, the confidence is key. The confidence is definitely key, so that you believe, you have that self belief regardless of what anyone else believes. You have to believe in yourself. But the problem with only having irrational confidence is that that's something that people only have. They only have that part, but you need to be able to prove that. That's the first step, having the confidence. You have to prove it to yourself that you can get through these obstacles. You have done something difficult before. You can get through it and achieve what you're trying to achieve. And in law school, I came into law school knowing that it was kind of like a war zone type of thing where people are trying to, take people down and stuff like that. Like, I'm not going to do that, but, I'm not going to let that be done to me. So fortunately, CUNY, is different. It's not really all the way like that, like a lot of other law schools. But law schools and the law in general is elitist. So, once you get in there, everybody thinks that, the world revolves around them. And sometimes they forget, we're in school. There's people outside of the law school really going through things. So as for me, to answer your question, I would say I didn't necessarily have that, based off the sports background and the self-belief. But I see that, I see people who don't have it, and it's tough. It's tough. So what I would say to them is that, believe in yourself first, and, believe in the work, but you got to do the work. A lot of times people say, have all the Instagram quotes and everything, but, when it's time to, do the work, they don't do it. And then the other thing is that sometimes they use like the mental health and everything as a thing to not do the work. To be blunt, they use it to be lazy and say, well, my mental health, is suffering, but they're not even doing anything. They're not even doing anything. So it's a fine line that you have to walk. You have to prove, you have to have confidence, but you also have to prove yourself to yourself and be willing to fail a couple of times. And then, okay, what can I take from this? And how can I, build on that to be better next time?
What is an example of a time that you perceived that you failed, but you realize that it helped you?
Not passing the bar the first time. I mean, that was definitely tough. It's not easy, not passing, especially on the first time. So when I didn't pass, you got all these thoughts going through your head, like, man, I got to go through this again. Should I take the next exam? Should I skip that one and take another one? So here's one thing that I did on the day of. So to pass the bar in New York, you need a 266 total score. I got a 259. So I Googled, could you pass anywhere in the United States with a 259? And the answer was no. I was like, oh man, I couldn't pass with this score, no state. So, what I did, to motivate myself was like, what's the highest you can get in the United States? And it's a 280, and that's in Alaska. So, my second, when I went back and started studying, I was like, I'm gonna aim for a 281. Because with a 281, you can pass anywhere in the United States, and also it's 15 points higher than New York. So if you aim that high, then even if you get 10 points less, you're still gonna pass in New York. So then I got back to it, started. I keep about to say started training again, but started studying again for the exam, and I end up passing, with above the 266 and the 281, which I didn't expect, but I was motivated, by that failure, and it just taught me to that I am who I say I am, and that's just another way that I had to prove to myself that I can get over this obstacle, based on that failure, and unfortunately I did.
I think a lot of times people are scared to follow their dreams because they have a fear of failure. And I think it's always hard trying to pick yourself back up and starting it. But that's why we created this podcast. Hi, friends, it's Phaedra, and you are listening to Phae's Place. Join us each week as we talk to industry insiders about their journey and what it takes to turn dreams into a reality. Whether you aspire to be in the entertainment field or just inspired by the hustle, count this as your backstage pass. Join us every Monday for a brand new episode. And also follow us on TikTok, Instagram, and Facebook at Phae's Place. What advice do you have for up-and-coming attorneys?
I would say definitely if you're still in college, or in high school, read a lot, at the same time. I think that helped me with my classes, and particularly one semester when I was in Syracuse, for undergrad. I had multiple literature classes, so I had to read a lot of books at the same time, and it kind of helps with reading a lot of cases at the same time. It helps you with your writing because you expand your vocabulary, and it just helps you also manage time. And it's also like going back to the time management and the discipline. Like you have to read this book in 2 weeks, and this book in a week, and another in this amount of time. You have to kind of schedule out. All right, I'm gonna read 50 pages of this today, and then read this book at this time. So I think it helps when you read a lot of different texts if you like to, but definitely reading is definitely important. Writing is also important, but the thing I like about the law that's different than in school, especially college, you're not just writing 15 page, 20, 25 page papers just to write it, and you struggling to find, the words and the topics to extend this 10 pages to 15. So I'm glad I don't have to do that anymore, because with the law, you usually have page limits, 25 pages, 20 pages, which I always been better at making things more concise. I actually had to work on, expanding, because I like to get right to the point. But writing is just as helpful as well, because it helps you be more creative, because once you get in the law, it's more stringent on the topics, and you got to focus on the law and have it this way and that way. So that creative writing also helps when you're not writing for the court. You're writing on behalf of your client, and then you can tap into another side of writing, because it's all different types.
And another thing that I learned from you watching you work, I realized how similar sports and the law is. Like, I hate to say like it's a game, but there's a winner, there is a loser,
Yep.
and you have to know something about the opposing party,
Yep.
and like you said, discipline. So, yeah, I was listening. I was listening. I love when I get a chance to find new perspectives about things and connect them. I love all things entertainment.
Yes.
So, if you had the opportunity to create any legal show, what would be the premise
Ooh, a legal show
or movie?
or movie. I think I would create one about a black law office. If I have a little bit of comedy in it, it would be something like Abbott Elementary, the show, but instead of being in school, it would be a black law office.
Yes.
And that'd be great. That'd be great. Show the ins and outs of, just being in specifically a black law office, and, how all the pieces intertwine, how it works over there versus how it works in here, things that you can talk about, what you can't talk about, and more predominantly white law offices. That might be a good pitch.
I think that's a great pitch. And I am a screenwriter, so
Hey, you got
I
it.
could see it like one episode, someone coming to us. This case is going to be so good. It's going to get you millions of dollars. And it's something like, y'all going to be so rich because I was walking down the street and a car passed me by. I mean, come on. That is a case for you.
Take it on. Take it pro bono.
Take it pro bono. That's okay. Y'all don't believe in me anyway. I'm going to go to another lawyer. So you do that. Praise God. Go ahead. That's funny. We laughing, but we have both worked in a law firm, so we know people are creative with their requests. So,
Yes, yes.
what was one of the most interesting memories that you have had in your career thus far?
I think one of the interesting moments, and this is especially for younger attorneys, know the rules, because a lot of times when you're going up against more veteran or older attorneys, they try to use your age against you, like you don't know what the rules are of law, the rules are of depositions or trials and things of that nature. Of course, you're still learning because you're a young attorney, but know the base level rules. I got an example. I'm doing a deposition, one of my first set of depositions, and I had the judge's number right here just in case we had to call. But we usually don't have to call the judge during depositions. But I had that preparation. I got it there. And basically, in that case, it was during early COVID time, so it's like 2020, 2021. People were still wearing their mask a lot. I still wear my mask, as you know, but it was during that time where people were wearing their masks, and I was like, was it during the COVID pandemic? And then the other attorney this is just to set up the time of when the case happened. This is not even the main thing about the case, but the other attorney said, objection. What's the basis? He's like, call Dr. Fauci. It's so this is not supposed to happen. That's something that's called a speaking objection, because he's interrupting my questioning of the witness, and it's no privilege, or he should answer the question, he shouldn't be speaking. And he did that a lot of times throughout the deposition. So we ended up having to call the judge, and just once when I read through the transcript, I admire my composure and during the deposition, because I know the rules. You can't just object like that. And then in front of the judge, when we had to go before the court because of that situation, because we had to take another deposition because he ruined that one. He's like, I was talking down to his client and all these types of things, and obviously that was a lie. But the judge said, well, that from reading the transcript, it didn't look like that. It looked like you were the one that was talking to your client in not the best way. And in this district, you said 25 year career. Well, in this district, this is not how we do depositions. So there's going to be another deposition. You're going to let Mr. Powell ask his questions, and that's that. And he was like, oh, judge. And she was like, don't turn your face up at me. That's what it's going to be. So, even when you do everything right, in the legal field, people will still try to disparage your name or lie on you when things that just didn't happen. So it's always nice when the judge, sees through, for lack of a better terms, the BS that a lot of attorneys, try to use on maybe not so veteran or younger attorneys. So that was definitely interesting.
So, what's next for you as you continue to pursue your own dreams, whether it's personally, professionally? What are you currently dreaming of?
Well, my dream is still to end mass incarceration. Like especially that's something that affects Black people a lot more than anyone else in this country. Based on the laws and things of that nature. So, what I'm trying to do is use the law as a tool to fight against that. That level of oppression. So it's learning everything. Learning how the ins and outs of the law. Learning about trials. Learning because all of these I feel are. I don't. I'm gonna be a solid trial lawyer, but I don't consider myself born for trial. I consider myself, a lawyer that's trying to use the law in every facet to change it and make it better for us. So, if that's going to trial, that's going to trial. If that's doing depositions, that's doing depositions. If that's, whatever, talking to government officials, is doing that. But because you're in the field, you have access to all of that because you're constantly suing, the counties or NYPD. You coming in contacts. You have mayors and prospective mayors. 3 phone calls away. Someone like Benjamin Crump is 2 phone calls away. And having that access helps. And learning about the law and trying to change things. And then you have the ability to bounce it off different people's minds of what's the strategy that we can use to take this down, especially in this administration and this setup of the Supreme Court. So it's like what's the best way to make change.
Well, I appreciate you stopping by Phae's Place. I am so proud of all the work that you have done, that you will do, and I know that you will achieve your dreams. And you are welcome to stop by anytime, Mr. Powell.
Thank you for having me, and right back at you. I love Phae's Place. I listened to the one that was done before this to prepare. I had to do my due diligence. So no, I love all the work that you're doing, and I'll definitely stop by whenever you want me to.
Thank you so much. And thank you, listening audience, for joining us today. And we'll be back next week with another chance to dream together. Love you all for listening. This podcast episode was recorded with Riverside.